And it is time to go live on radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the Big1050.com. And folks, listen. You hear that? That joy, that jubilance that you are, I'm sure, hearing across the Michigan fan atmosphere and blogosphere. It wasn't present a few weeks ago. It was sorrow. It was despair. Not a Michigan fan in sight was optimistic about what was on the horizon. But I do remember Brian Cook saying, wait a minute. We shouldn't just be giving up. We should just be throwing in the towel. Of course, there's a chance these Wolverines could go out and win a few games. And that's exactly what they've done. Joining me to talk about the Wolverines' trek to the Sweet 16, the MGoBlog Roundtable, led, of course, by the man who started it over at MGoBlog, Brian Cook. Brian, good morning. How are you?
Good. I'd also like to remind people that I predicted Roddy Gale would go for 26 on 4 or 6 3-point shooting.
Yeah, right. Yeah, have a great prediction.
I think it was my preview actually that said, hey, we're probably going to need something wild to beat Texas A&M, like Roddy Gale shooting 50%, which underdid it. I was not positive on Roddy Gale. Now the rest of the team couldn't make a three, and I think he made 4 out of the 6 threes that the entire team made, as well as 4 out of the 6 threes that he attempted.
Yeah.
But I gotta take credit for Gale because I was in the preview.
Yeah, that other voice you hear is Seth Fisher. Seth, how are you this morning?
I'm good. I'm writing my Auburn preview because Michigan keeps skirting death. In fact, they don't just keep skirting death; they keep tripping death up. Death falls in his face, and then they dance around death, kind of kicking his butt, being like, "Ha ha ha! I'm kicking your butt." And Auburn is death, so he's gonna kind of worried that he's going to pick up his skide and kind of take us seriously now. And this is a good team.
Yeah. But they're beatable. They're beatable.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Craig Ross. Craig, how are you this morning?
I'm giving Brian credit. He was the most optimistic, I think, of all of us and of any person surrounding paying attention to Michigan basketball. And he did seem to think that Michigan had more than a puncher's chance. So congratulations on that one, Brian. And I didn't think they'd be in the round of 16. I'll admit it. I didn't think they'd win the Big Ten championship. I'll admit it. And I'm very happy that I was wrong on this stuff. But and I still can't quite figure out how they're winning. But that's been sort of the reality of the season. That you look at them and you're shooting threes, not really. You're getting turned over, yeah. You're getting killed on the offensive boards often, but somehow they keep, they won 27 games or whatever it is.
Well, I mean, that's not what happened against A&M, right? So
not against A&M. It has in other games. And A&M, I think they won the offensive rebounds, even though A&M was the number 1 or 2 offensive rebounding team in the
they're
country.
number 1.
They're number one.
Yeah. Okay, Michigan won that one. They did lose turnover slightly, but I think it was a fairly even game in the number of shots. Unlike the first game against San Diego, where I think we did get turned over something to the tune of 14-8 or something like that. Yeah. So we did lose turnovers there, and that of course was a strength of San Diego.
Well, I mean, San Diego, it was 14-8 in turnovers, but they had 4 more offensive rebounds. So the shot volume there is only -2.
Mm-hmm.
So for this team, like they don't need to be exactly paired. They don't need the exact parity against most teams because they're going to score very efficiently from 2. They just need to be in the ballpark, and they were in both of these games. And it was key to the victory because, it looks like a 12-point win for Michigan, but that's a 3-point game late. So it's all for Michigan. It's all about just getting the same number of shots as your opponent, and eventually, you're going to break through in some sort of extremely efficient way. Like Michigan shot 27% from 3 against A&M, 1.2 points per possession because they got to the line 36 times, and about 30 of those were before A&M started fouling intentionally. And they don't actually shoot that well from two, but part of that was a lot of the bunnies that they missed were immediately put back. So the offensive rebounds were translated into points for the most part. So it just felt like this is what Michigan can do if they can just have shot parity. Now against Auburn, shot parity probably isn't going to be enough, because Auburn has a lot of snipers. They have another point center like Michigan has. They are very efficient both on offense and on defense. So, like, Michigan has to play the game they played against Texas A&M. They probably have to shoot about 40% from three to win this game.
Yeah, you look at a couple of things that were glaring to me. Number one, I was struck by how close they kept the UCSD game, because I was just dumbfounded by how many people picked that game to be an upset. I just was amazed. There's no way that many people should have thought Michigan was going to be upset by that team. But for the turnovers in the first half, Michigan would have been blowing them off the floor. But of course, they do what they do, and it wound up being close.
Wait, Sam, who's they? Is it Michigan or UCSD?
Michigan
Okay.
Michigan made that game way closer at half than it should have been.
Well, I mean, that's
what they do.
Yeah.
Doing what they do. And then of course now UCSD have some confidence, and they start hitting some shots, and it winds up being a much closer game than if they don't turn the basketball over in the first half, and it's a game at halftime. Now they don't have any confidence coming out of the break, and they aren't playing for the game. They're playing for pride. If they're playing for pride, it's a much different game. At any rate, you come in this next game though, and what was glaring to me with 8 minutes to go, or about 8 minutes to go, they're up 4. Texas A&M is up 4, and Buzz Williams talked about this after the game. It's like, we're feeling good. We got like 70 points. Like, we're rolling as far as we're concerned, and we couldn't hit a shot around the rim after that. It was like a force field went up. It's like, well, we couldn't convert bunnies anymore. I don't know what happened to the defense at that point, fellas, but the defense in the last 8 minutes of the game for the Michigan Wolverines, if they can bottle that up, combined with the defense that we've seen the rest of the postseason, you carry that into the Auburn game. That, to me, that what Michigan has been on the defensive end of the court has been, to me, what has sustained them the most here in the postseason.
I mean, they also scored. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
UCSD game is interesting because they only played well when their best player wasn't on the floor.
Yeah.
Because Michigan provides some interesting answers to a lot of questions. Because and Brendan Haywood, like, I thought he did better in the A&M game, but when he was doing the UCSD game late, and he's like, "You got switched under Danny Wolf. You need to drive him." I'm like, "Bro, did you watch the Purdue game? Did you watch him pack Amish Jordan like twice in a row? Like, it's not as easy as that. And when you have a 6'6" guy who's mainly good at getting into the post and doesn't really have a whole lot of range to his game, that's a terrible matchup for Michigan. And like, I felt like they finally did a lot of 5-out stuff when Tate Jones was on the court, and that was a problem because that exposes Golden a little bit, right? Because he's not Danny Wolf as a perimeter defender. But in any case, yeah, the defense has actually been stronger than the offense since Michigan kind of fell off midseason after the 4-5 pick and roll kind of got scouted into the ground. So, if you go hop on KenPom, they're significantly better defense. They're 13th in the country versus 39th on offense. So they have been winning a lot of these games by holding pretty good opponents to barely a point per possession or less. Like, they did get helped out by the tiredness factor in the Big Ten title game. But other than that, the teams are struggling to get over a point per possession against them. And these are good teams playing good basketball for the most part.
Yeah, I agree. And I think perhaps San Diego was sold a bit short. I mean, that team was 30-4. I mean, and I'm not saying they played the world's best competition, but they were still winning all their games. And they're 30-4. And I think they're well coached. The guy is strange, but he seems like a good coach. And so that, and they were 36 at the time, I think, on Ken Palm. So the advanced stats seem to recognize that was a legitimate team. Compare, for example, Michigan State played number 150 in the first round, then number 41 in the second. So I think, at least from Ken Palm's point of view, San Diego was a better team than either of the teams that Michigan State has played so far. And so I think it's a mistake to sell them short. Yeah, they were not tall, but they were a good
I
team.
think that's what happened. I think people looked at
Mhm.
they looked at the numbers, the metrics.
Yeah.
When they walked on the court, I said, "There's no freaking no way. Are you kidding me?
That was
Oh
Yeah.
my
that was the
god!"
whole preview. That was the whole preview. That Aniwano Tate Jones is their one guy who scores a lot, but he likes to get in the post and post up against your fours, and that's not going to work against Danny Wolf. And that guy, like, they were only good when he was off the court, and they had some great shots from Tyler McGuy, who looks like the anyway. They had a really good shooting day from their secondary score, but they could not score when their top guy was on the court, and that was it. That was a
Yeah,
bad match.
give them credit. I mean, it wound up being a close game. It wound up looking like the metrics and the analytics said it was going to look, minus the upset, of course.
Right.
But again, man, if we aren't throwing it to the other team up teen times in the first half, geez, you're up 25 at the break, and it's a
They've been
different.
doing that a lot, haven't they? Like in the first 5 minutes, they're always. We get to the first 5 minutes of every game, and it's like, oh, we're on pace to have 60 turnovers right now, and then it cleans up. So I'm wondering what's going on. Where, like, they why do we need those turnovers at the beginning? Because if they didn't have them, they would have some games where they had like 4 turnovers or something.
But then they go in A&M, and this is what I wonder. Like, where do games like A&M and then Purdue in the Big Ten tournament, where would they have in that game? Was 6 or 7 turnovers? What was it, guys? And then 9. They had 9 against A&M. Where do those games come from? Where it's like, well, you got it in you, where you just take care of the basketball. Like, it's obviously an anomaly. That's not who they are, but it's in there. So can you channel it for 4 more games? It seems unrealistic to channel it in what are probably going to be the toughest games of the season, right? But still, it's in there because you just did it in this last game against A&M. So,
I mean, they scored 30 points in the last 10 minutes of that A&M game. Like, we were talking about their defense being really good at the end there. The offense, that was something that we hadn't seen all year, and they're coming from guys that weren't really contributing that much this year. LJ Kesan gives them an opportunity to get in the lane. They haven't had that. They haven't had anybody who can just dribble into the lane and get a basket. Roddy Gale has that capability, but everyone's sitting back on him because he wasn't hitting shots. So they took that away from him. Reuben Jones, could back his way down, or you've had times when Trey Donaldson can kind of, bounce around in there, and he does hit an incredible shot to make this thing a 5-point game and keep, Michigan ahead near the end. But that ability for LJ Kesan to get in there and make that play, and some of his defensive play. Now, he's not perfect, right? We're not talking about. I don't think he's turned the corner officially to being a great player. He's going to be a much better player next year and further on in his career. But now he's somebody who's going to come out there and change the look of the game when he's on the court, which is not really something they got out of him until this game.
Well, I think Kesan has been coming along. 2 of the 3 games he played in the Big Ten tournament, he was key in those games. And I think if you got Dusty May in an unguarded moment, he might admit that they should have given Kesan more minutes all along.
Oh, he already said it.
Oh, he has?
He
Oh.
keeps saying it. Every press conference is like, man, I should have played this guy more.
Oh, I
Yeah.
haven't. So in any event, good for him for admitting it, because to me, it looked obvious from the beginning that he was a basketball player and had value and had something that the team didn't really have, which is a guy who had ability to break down the defense, even though he was raggedy at it and continues to be somewhat raggedy at it. But I think that will come along. But Kesan has been important during the Big Ten tournament and during the NCAA tournament. So anyway, and there's been a lot of noise, unlike about Michigan in the transfer portal already. I mean, we got like 4 names out there for now.
Yeah, well, but I want to stick on the Kesan deal for a little bit more because man, he in the A&M game, he was crucial. Before you get to Roddy,
Yeah,
you had to have LJ Kesan be the one guy on the floor for Michigan that was giving them a rudder, giving them some offense, some aggression to the rim at a time where it just felt like they couldn't get anything going offensively. They were blowing up everything, A&M was. And this was the one guy. And Dusty, it was almost like he's like, hey, go ahead, young fella. And it was like, what did he say in one press conference? They don't know what they don't know. It was like the magnitude of the moment didn't matter. But he wasn't out of control either. That was the thing that it felt like early in the season. This was a guy, you throw him on the court, he's gonna get a charge, or he's gonna dribble it out of bounds. He's gonna throw up a crazy 3. He's not gonna play under control. And in these moments, in this crucial game when they gotta have it, he is attacking the rim under control. He's getting to the rim or he's getting to the free throw line and keeping them in the game, because they don't have LJ Kesan early in the second half of that game. I think Michigan, they get wiped out of that game. He's the reason they were in it for Roddy to go off for 12 straight points or whatever it was.
Yeah. And the
ahead.
thing that the number one thing he brings to the table is just like an attitude, right? So he comes in an NCAA tournament game that Michigan is, kind of scuffling in. He immediately hits a 3, and then he has 2 drives to the bucket for Danny Wolf dunks that, the easiest shots that Wolf had all day. And the moment's not too big for him. And he's always been a guy who's been confident in what he's doing. It's just, maybe he shouldn't have been. But the development is the kind of thing you want to see, right? Like the guy who's comes in and is clearly talented but hasn't put it all together, kind of solidifying things at the end of his freshman year, is a story that often develops into year 2 blow up, and then he's a star. And I think that's something that we all think is coming.
Yeah, and how about this for coaching for Roddy? Because I mean not for Roddy, for Dusty. It seemed questionable, right? When he said, "Listen, I have a formula for allowing guys to take threes." He said, "How are we getting them? Inside out, ball reversals, guys shooting open threes in transition. There's a formula for how we shoot threes. And then are you making them in practice?" He said, if it follows a certain script, I'm not going to tell guys to not shoot. And he said, Roddy is hitting his threes in practice. And if they follow that script, I'm not going to tell them not to shoot. And it just seemed like with the way he was missing those threes, man, is that really? Should you maybe you should tell him not to shoot? And he didn't. Keep shooting, and it paid off. He kept telling him keep shooting, and obviously his teammates bought into that too. And to their credit, it worked, because finally all of that faith that they continued to put in him paid off at a time when they absolutely had to have it, because he was huge in this game in the way that you have to have in the tournament. You got to have one of those games where someone other than your core, your expected guy, steps up and has that huge game. In this game, it was Roddy Gale.
Yeah, and it was important for them to hit for somebody to hit because nobody else was hitting anything. Like if Roddy Gale has a regular Roddy Gale game, Michigan doesn't win this because Danny Wolf goes over 3. Vlad tried one, his missed. Right, he hasn't hit one in a while. Maybe the Northwestern game is it the last time he's got one to go in. Reuben Jones went 1 for 4. That's kind of normal for him. Trey Donaldson missed all of his. Will Cheddar missed both of his, and that was the only reason Cheddar could be out there, right? Because he was getting just whooped by Farrell Payne every single time they had that matchup. So somebody had to hit those shots, and no one was getting anything to go down at the rim. I thought Vlad Golden looked pretty tired by the end of the. They're playing a mile up, they're playing a mile high, and he's been running up and down the court, and he just had the UC San Diego game, and I thought Vlad was just gassed. And I thought that was part of the issue with the missed bunnies as well. So somebody's just got to score points. And Gale he was missing. He was throwing more air balls than he was throwing balls at that almost went in. It's not like Kesan where I'm like, okay, these eventually are going to go in. They're just kind of spinning around the cup and bouncing out. And Gale just did it, man. Like I think that we saw a little bit of it because he had, I think, 1 or 2 in the game before that, right? So he's been able to hit shots in the past. It's not like this is just something that's always been a problem for him, but he's really, really struggled through the season, and to see him come out of that, and I don't think it just happened overnight. I think that he had, he hit 1, 2, I think, against UC San Diego. I think he had another couple that kind of got close in the Big Ten tournament. So it's not like it's just been completely bereft. Yeah, he got 1 against Maryland. So 1 of 3 against UC San Diego. So it was coming. There was something coming before this. Now I wasn't expecting to hit 4 or 6, but when you feel it, right? And it's not like they're closing out on him yet. But just that. Now you have to consider him a 3-point shooter. Now we can open up things that we had before, right? Like the pick and roll game, the way they got scouted to death is like, okay, well, let the guys shoot because they're gonna miss, right? Like just collapse on them and let them kick it out, and they'd kick it out, and then Roddy Gale would get the ball, and he'd have to either pass it along the perimeter or he'd have to drive, and they'd just be waiting for him. If he doesn't have to drive, suddenly Michigan's offense could be something kind of like the offense we had at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, it was good to see, and they had to have it. Now the flip side is, people are asking about Namari. I think, I don't think it was necessarily something wrong with Namari. I mean, he very well may have gotten on track if you played him more minutes. He probably would have got up more shots. But Dusty May, you roll with the hot hand. I think it had more to do with you're riding the guys who are playing well. You're riding LJ Kesan, you're riding Dusty May, than there being something wrong with Roddy.
Well, no, and Namari doesn't rebound, and you're playing Texas A&M. And he got bodied out of there on a very early one by one of the guys who isn't one of their major rebounders even. And it was like, okay, I thought that was just something we were going to have to live with because you need Namari out there. But this just wasn't his game. It wasn't his matchup. And you needed somebody who could drive, someone who could put a little bit of fear in those guys because they're really good defenders, and they usually only have like one guy out in the court, Texas A&M does, that you can beat off the dribble. And if you can find that guy, then you can kind of find a hole in their defense, and then they have to replace him for somebody who's not very offensive. So that was a key against A&M, is to have somebody who could put the ball on the floor and drive when the ball went outside. And you saw that against Kesan, right? Like he drove on that guy a couple times. So it was it just wasn't Namari's game, really.
The one thing I would like to mention is I didn't see the tiredness by Wolf or Golden. What I saw was they had 21 rebounds between them, 10 offensive. And, aside from, Gale having a good game and Kesan being a spark, I thought the big guys really did great jobs on the both offensive and defensive boards. And as much as anything, that was key against this particular team because that's what they do. And incidentally, what did you? I mean, I still think Buzz Williams is a phenomenal coach, I mean, I always come away with games after we play him thinking that, his teams know what they're doing. So anyway,
Yeah, they were dumbfounded after the game by the last 8 minutes. It's like
Mhm.
we don't know what happened. We could not score. We couldn't score around the rim. They were relegated to being a perimeter team by and large. I think Wade Taylor kind of shot him out of the game. Like, the dude. I don't know how many
Mhm.
threes. I don't know how many threes he shot in the
He was one
last.
of 8.
Yeah, I don't know how many of those attempts came in the last 8 minutes, but their point was they felt like they could not execute. They could not convert around the rim in the final stages of the game at the level that they converted in the first 32 minutes of the game, and they thought that was the difference.
Well, Farrell
Whatever.
Payne.
Yeah.
So what,
Yeah.
what all of us are talking about is Farrell Payne, who is a really good player, and nobody remembers him at Minnesota because he was playing behind Garcia, but he was a really good player, and he was just too strong. And glad that was when I was talking about Golden, looking tired. I think he took 3 flops against Payne. I like in very quick succession. And they weren't buying it the first 2 times, and then the third one was just ridiculous. And he is like he couldn't. I think he was saving it for the rebounding, but the guards were, and that's how you play Texas A&M. Texas A&M likes to beat your guards up on the offensive boards. But A&M, unless Farrell Payne is actually bodying a guy, and that was what was happening in the first half, and he can't do that forever, right? He gets tired. So I thought that A&M scored what they could score. I thought 79 points was kind of where I expected them to be in this game. Now, they don't shoot very well. They haven't been a good shooting team all year. What they do is they rebound their misses, so they get so many more shots, right? It's the opposite approach to Michigan. So talking about not making their shots at the rim or whatnot, like, when Farrell Payne took a shot at the rim, it went in. When anybody else did, they weren't Farrell Payne, and that's been Texas A&M all season.
Yep. So listen, let's get a break in. This Auburn game, we'll get your predictions coming up on the other side. We'll see your thoughts on will we see this matchup between Michigan and Michigan State in the Elite Eight. Seems like a lot of Sparties don't want to see that. I remember when there was an opportunity for Michigan and Ohio State to see each other again in the playoffs. I was like, please, absolutely, I want to see that game again. I mean, the opportunity to beat the hell out of Ohio State again. Absolutely. Give me that chance, please. But the Spartans don't really seem to want that game again. Why? Why would you want to play that game again, Spartans? Get to that on the other side. A lot of coaching movement, transfer portal talk as well. We'll dive into it all. Return here on the Michigan Insider, MGoBlog Roundtable here on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at thebig1050.com.
Clear on the radio.
All right.
Of course, they don't want Michigan. The only thing they could get is if they win, they get nothing. They already destroyed us twice, right?
Well, why wouldn't if I'm State, I want to play Michigan.
Well, considering who you could get, right? You'd rather have Michigan than Auburn.
And it's going to be a home game for Auburn, or close to a home game for Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're going to have Auburn fans there up the yin yang, and it's not. I don't know how far of a drive is it.
Absolutely.
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 The Spartans I know want Michigan. They think it's going to be a walk in the park against Ole Miss. They're playing like they think they're just going to. They have a ticket directly to the Elite Eight, and they are concerned about Auburn, which they have a right to be because Auburn is Michigan if they never turned it over.
Yeah.
See, I gotta go. I'm gonna go watch the Auburn A&M game.
Yeah, A&M. I mean, incidentally, Auburn was rooting for Michigan. They got beat already once by A&M, and so I'm not sure that. Well, what about your buddy Jerry, Brian?
Well, he said the exact same thing, is that they didn't want to
Oh.
play A&M. Like,
Yeah,
I think Buzz
okay.
Williams is 5-2 against Auburn the past few years. But, the problems Michigan poses are not the problems A&M poses. So,
Right.
it's not going to be a situation where it's like, okay, well, we beat A&M, so we're obviously going to beat the team that beat A&M. For one, 24 offensive rebounds for Texas A&M in that game, 60% of their misses. That's
that's
if Michigan does that, yeah, they can beat Auburn. It's what was it? Total of 17 extra shots for A&M. So, maybe that is something Michigan can try to do after out rebounding A&M.
Right.
They do get on the offensive boards themselves quite a bit. So it is something where, if you want to emphasize trying to replicate that game plan, except you want to hit some shots, then that's actually a solid option. One comment is that their point guard Denver Jones did not play in that game, so that will disrupt your offense significantly. Although Janai Broom is their number one assist guy by some distance.
Yeah, what's his game like? I really haven't watched Auburn.
Imagine Danny Wolf if he never turned the ball over and blocked everything in his vicinity.
Except, he's a 27% 3-point shooter. So he does take some, 83 on the year.
Mm-hmm.
He's not that great of a free throw shooter either. So if you can get him away from the basket, Wisconsin did a pretty good job against Vlad Golden by just making him take that extra step away from the basket and making that hook sort of a longer shot. That's got to be the goal for Michigan against Janai Broom.
This guy said that A&M controlled the Auburn guards.
Well, they have that. So they're 8. This team, and they play senior, and then a 5-star freshman Todd Pettiford, and that guy was the starter for that game because Denver Jones was out.
Back in 30 seconds,
also the content. Jerry mentioned this on our podcast. The context of that game is Auburn just clinched the SEC and had like a Tuesday game against the 9:00 Tuesday game against Texas A&M. Who's going to work you on the
road,
boards.
right? Wasn't that at A&M?
Yeah, and it was like if you're going to lose one game of the year, it was okay. We don't need this game at all. And it was
back in about 10 seconds, guys. Back in about 10.
Okay. So, that game is not necessarily what A&M is going to look like in a tournament game.
Out at 55, I got you, Ira.
And we're back on radio in about 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the Big1050.com. Before we get back to roundtable talk, folks, want to tell those of you who are in the market for a new vehicle that our friends at Brighton Ford have you covered. And those of you who are truck lovers ought to be happy to know that truck month is here, folks. At Brighton Ford, you need to head right in, settle into the seat of your favorite truck, get in, take control, and drive off the lot in the truck that was meant for you. Take advantage of the huge savings through March 31st. Well-qualified lessees can lease a 2024 Ford F-150 for as low as $216 a month. Only $3,500 plus first payment, taxes, doc fee, title, license, and state fees due at signing. Security deposit waive, 7,500 miles per year, 24-month lease. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD to see dealer for full details. Tell them I sent you, just like I sent my friends over at the University of Michigan Athletic Department. And you, too, be on board with Brighton Ford. And with that, guys, are you on board with Michigan pulling the upset of the Auburn Tigers? Are they going to send Bruce Pearl packing? What say you, Brian Cook?
Probably not. So, you want to believe, and so there is a kind of a theme in victories against Auburn this year is that you absolutely crush them in terms of either 2-point shooting or 3-point shooting. And, Michigan just hasn't had that. So Alabama was able to beat them by shooting 62% from 3. A&M crushed them on the boards in the SEC tournament. Tennessee was 93% from the line. So it just feels like you're kind of going uphill against a team that has the number 3 offense in the country. and you need sort of an outlying shooting performance. Now we got one from Ronnie Gale, so maybe the sort of team at large can pull that off. But the thing about Michigan over the past, I don't know, 2-3 months is the number of times they've shot above 35% from three is maybe 2 or 3. So their three-point shooting has really fallen off as the year's gone on. Before they were in the top 100, now they're 201st. And the trend there is very negative. And I don't really see a way to beat a team as good as Auburn without, hitting some shots.
Craig?
Yeah, I'm not optimistic. I mean, Ken Palm has Auburn as a 77% chance of winning this game. That's remarkably high at this juncture of an NCAA tournament. I don't know if they've considered the home court factor. This will probably be more or less a home court game for Auburn. Auburn is, as Brian points out, number 3 on the advanced metrics on offense. They're also number 12 on defense. They've played a really good schedule. They've rarely lost badly at all this year. They've lost a few close ones, a couple, but not much that wasn't close. I just think they're too good of a team. Also, they're all seniors. It's a pretty much completely senior team. I don't think the moment is going to be too big for them. Pearl is a good coach. I think, we'll acquit ourselves well, I hope, but I don't think this is a game Michigan can win. So go ahead, Seth. You think they're winning, right?
Yeah, well, I think that they're Michigan, but better. When you look around and you wonder where all of the surprise seeds are, right? The Sweet 16 is just a bunch of Big 12 and Big 10 and SEC teams. Where are these guys? What happened to the Morehead States and whatnot? Well, Morehead State's best player, it was Joni Broom, right? And there he is, right? FIU, where's that guy? Well, that's Denver Jones. Georgia Tech, where's that guy? That's Miles Kelly. They were also put together through the portal, but they stuck around another few years. So now these guys have been playing together for a long time as well. And like you mentioned, there are 8 seniors and a freshman, and a bunch of those are COVID seniors. So we're looking at levels of development of basketball players beyond what even historically seniors were, right? So this is a new type of team. I don't think the tournament has seen a team this good in a very long time, because you'd lose guys to the NBA in the past, because the portal would mean you couldn't really build depth. And this is kind of like what the SEC has done writ large, where they can grab a lot of players who might have been stars or at least starters on other teams, and put them together and form a winning team and have them stick together for a few years, because the NBA isn't necessarily interested in taking them right away. Now they're going to take Tate Pettiford next year if they don't take him, if he doesn't go this year. But the other guys are all seniors and super seniors, and you go through the whole roster. Denver Jones, who is he? Well, he's Trey Donaldson, but bigger, right? Donaldson had to leave this team, because he wasn't going to be able to play behind those guys. Miles Kelly, who's that? Well, he's a 40% shooter that they got from Georgia Tech, who can also create a little bit, and doesn't really have many assists, but he can get to the rim on his own a little bit. Doesn't really do it much because he doesn't have to, but he's going to knock down his shots. Chad Bacon-Mazzara, that guy is, Namari Burnett, except for he's also going to be a creator. He's also going to be passing, or you could call him Roddy Gale, but shoots 40%, right? Like that guy is a dude, and he's 6'7", and he can rebound a little bit too. I talked about Broom. Like, that's, if Danny Wolf really was like a first rounder, that's what he would look like, right? No turnovers. He's got a 9 turnover rate, even though he's a big trying to be the primary creator. It's insane. The guy does not turn it over. He also blocks 8% of shots when he's on the court. Dylan Cardwell, just a monster. Just like a Ben Wallace level, just strong dude at center. Doesn't really contribute offensively that much, but he'll be on the putbacks and whatnot. But you see 6'11", 255, and you're like, oh, okay, that's not going to be too bad for Vlad. No, this is going to be Vlad's toughest job yet, possibly. He is just a physical monster out there, and then they can go 5 out if they want to. And I haven't even talked about the bench, who are all really good role players. This is the kind of basketball team that they dreamed about putting together when the portal opened, when you said, let's just get some of the best kind of players in college, have them play together for 2 years, and see what happens. This is a team of destiny. I think they're going to win the national championship this year.
Oh,
Wow. Well, I must say, Les Austin Jr. He said, "You guys are with all this doom and gloom.
That's not doom.
Why even
Auburn
play the
respect.
game? It's over. It's over. Michigan shouldn't even show up."
no, they should show up. But
I just said they should show up and hit threes.
absolutely. And, but you also have to look at it objectively. And Michigan has had a great year. I mean, a phenomenal year. You can't say enough about this team. You can't say enough about their coaching and how when they looked pretty much dead to most people near the end of the season, all of a sudden they win 5 games all against top 20 teams except for San Diego. I mean, all the rest were in the top 20. And so can't say enough. On the other hand, what Seth said is just right. This Auburn team could be the best team in the country. They're certainly in the conversation, I think, with Florida and Duke. And, it's a road game against one of the best 3 teams in the country. And the odds of winning that one are not profound. Not impossible, but not profound.
Well,
You can say something else. Sam.
you see, guys. I'm gonna look at Trey again. I mean, this is one that he has to find another gear. If there's gonna be a guy who finds it, I think this is you want a guy to have, what did you say, a next level type of performance, an otherworldly performance, kind of like a Roddy Gale. The guy that I'm picking to have it is obvious Trey for obvious reasons. I mean, this is storybook. This is what he's playing for. This is the team he left. This is the team that he wasn't going to be able to play on, according to Seth there. He wasn't going to be able to play over these guys. So, okay, I'm not good enough to play here. And this is where you show them. There's definitely all kind of chips on the table for this game. So let's see it. And he stepped up in this last game, 2 games in a row. They go up UCSD. They go up by 2 late in that game. They got the momentum. He comes down, bangs 3 to put them up. This last game, he goes down the lane and makes this, whatever that was, he hit.
That was a ridiculous shot.
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever that shot it was. It was
made it up in the middle of the middle of the action.
It was the
Kesan whoop.
Yeah, it was the Kesan and Roddy show. But when they had to have it, it was Trey coming up with another clutch play. But I think it's going to be him from start to finish in this game if Michigan's going to do it. He's got to do it.
The path of beating these guys is, Michigan's going to switch everything, and Auburn doesn't really like that. They'd rather open up something and get their shooters to give Janai Broome some space. And they haven't faced 2 7-footers that much. They lost to Alabama in overtime. That was a tight game where both teams were scoring pretty well. But if Vlad Golden now he's not like having to run up and down the court, and he's had a week off for the first time in ages, right? If he just, I think it's the Vlad game. I think this is where you see whether he can crack what Dylan Cardwell does, because no one's really coming at him that hard. And that's what they do. They shut you off in the paint and then you give up.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Vlad's been big in all of their wins. It just feels like to beat them, you got to have an outstanding.
Here's what I just mean real quick. If they pull Dylan Cardwell when teams can just when he's not mattering, right? Because he doesn't score that much. So Michigan can kind of try to push usage to him, right? And then they use Janai Broome as their center, and that's a matchup that they could exploit if Broome has to play center against Vlad.
All right. We got to get out of here, folks. Listen, Roundtable, always an absolute blast. Looking forward to coming back next week and seeing, are we talking about a Final Four team? Going to be interesting. Looking forward to that. We're going to get to Dropping Dimes later on today, folks, so be sure to check that out. Until tomorrow, thanks for watching and listening to another edition